So this is the stress and nervous system and vagus nerve, particularly workshop. And we're going to go through some tips and strategies and exactly how to balance out your nervous system and rewire the vagus nerve. And then at the end of this, you guys all get a free special gift. So hopefully that's not the only reason you came, but that's a part of it. So today we're going to dive into really what I would consider a life-changing concept, and it sits at the crossroads of our physical health, emotional health, and also our spiritual health, and that is a thing called the vagus nerve. So you guys have heard of the vagus nerve. It's becoming more of a buzzword lately, but we're really going to talk about how chronic stress basically damages our health, it wrecks our health, it drives every chronic disease that we worry about, and then we're going to teach you how to rewire the nervous system from the inside out. And I really do wish that I had learned a lot of these tips and strategies in my 20s or my 30s. I think it would have saved me a lot of heartache and pain, and probably for my family too. So really for the first 40 years of my life, I don't really ever remember being like comfortable in my own skin. I just always had this anxious feeling like I was just not normal, I guess. I was anxious as a kid. I would sweaty hands, I would chew my fingernails, and every time I'd sit in a chair, my leg would shake and it would twitch. So and that probably all stems from when I was a kid. We moved around a lot, so we moved to 3 different states. I was always the new kid and trying to fit in and get in with the new crowd. And then sexually abused when I was 13 and 14 years old. And then my biological mom died of a drug overdose. And then we found my wife, and everything was wonderful. It was kind of just American dream kind of thing. And then had my daughter, and then very quickly had our second daughter, got pregnant with our second daughter, and we ended up losing her in the second half of that pregnancy. And then from probably 2 years or so beyond that, my wife was essentially bedridden. So that was stressful. And then starting a practice was stressful, and it was just one thing after the next. And I remember it felt as if the walls were kind of closing in on me. I just didn't know how to keep the balls juggling, essentially, until I found pain pills. And then when I found those, everything was kind of magical until it wasn't. And I remember when I first took that first pain pill, and this does relate to the vagus nerve, but I took that first one, and I remember the feeling I got from it. It was just like, whew, for the first time in 40 years, I felt normal. I felt like everything was just, this is how you're supposed to feel. And then it scared me because I knew that if something made you feel that good, it's not good. And I'm not an idiot. Like, I knew that had addictive potential, and it, was not the right path to go down. But, in spite of that, I kept going down that same path. And to the point to where it became a full-blown addiction, which led me to treatment. And I would have lost everything had my wife not forced me into treatment or strongly suggested that I go into treatment. I would have lost my marriage and my daughter, practice, license, finances, everything would have been totally gone. But by the grace of God, she got me into that treatment facility. And a lot of what we learned, it's not all of these exact techniques that we're going to teach tonight, but it's basically things to help regulate the nervous system and deal with stress so that we can deal with life on life's terms. And that's really what it comes down to, because stress is not going to go anywhere. We're all going to deal with stress. It's going to be part of just the existence of being a human being. It's how do we deal with it? Because it's not the load that breaks us down, it's how we carry it. So that's what tonight's about. So why does this matter? Well, number one is you're not broken. We're not broken. We're just stuck in survival mode, or we're stuck in fight or flight. Our bodies just run on that program of just literally being in fight or flight. And then most people really are just living with a dysregulated nervous system, by and large. If you look across the board, it's almost everybody. And the true healing actually starts when we can switch out of that stress response and get into a state where the nervous system feels safe and calm and restful and is allowed to heal. So that's what tonight's about. So if you're dealing with fatigue or anxiety or weight gain, it is definitely related to the vagus nerve. And if you're also dealing with gut issues and inflammation, which we know is the root cause of every chronic disease that we worry about, from cancer to heart disease to autoimmune disorders, or even problems with sleep, then it's related to your vagus nerve. And then if you're dealing with emotional overwhelm, burnout, depression, again, anxiety, like we said, then it's absolutely related to our vagus nerve. So this is a really big deal. It's not just, something that we have to pay attention to when it breaks down or things get catastrophic, but it's really a part of just navigating daily life. So stress, because we know that stress is related to every chronic disease. It's part or parcel or drives every chronic disease. 75 to 90% of all doctor visits are stress related, and that's according to the CDC. Chronic stress increases our risk of heart disease, so high blood pressure, high cholesterol, lipids go up, cancer goes up, diabetes, depression, autoimmune diseases, and you could also put in there fibromyalgia and ADD and ADHD and migraine headaches, and if you name a disease, it gets worse when stress goes up. 1 out of 3 Americans report extreme stress levels, and then stress-related illnesses cost over $250 billion every single year in the U.S. So it's not a problem we're going to get away from unless we deal with the root cause. So when it comes to stress, by the way, there's another name for stress, and that's called life. So and it just changes forms. So if your financial stress goes away, then your relationship stress shows up. And when that gets better, then your dog dies. And then there's a hurricane. And then so stress never really goes away. It just kind of changes forms. But in reality, we need stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. There's what's called eustress and distress. So the good stress would be the things that help to build resilience, to help our performance, things like getting a promotion at work. And if you get a promotion at work, that's a great, you're probably going to make more money, but then you're also probably going to have more responsibilities, right? So there's stress involved even in the good things. Learning a new hobby, having a child. If anyone has a kid in this room or has had children, you know that when you have a child, you have just signed a contract for a lifetime of stress. Guaranteed, 100%. Moving, and it's funny too, because my children are probably one of the greatest joys in my life, without a doubt. But they're also one of the greatest forms of stress in my life. Like it's a both and. And I don't think you get one without the other. Moving, buying a home, even like working out, like you can't build a muscle without stress. If I just lift a 1-pound dumbbell, that's not enough stress to create a muscle building response in the body. So you have to have stress to build and grow. And then you have your distress, which is like a death of a loved one or a death of a spouse. If we lose somebody that we love. Injuries and illness, problems with sleep or insomnia, fighting with our spouse, which we never do in my house. Money problems. So the list, we could probably triple that list if we just sat here long enough. So there's good and bad, and it's when our bodies are in a constant state of that stress that we don't know how to overcome, and it begins to break our bodies down is when it becomes an actual health issue. So it's growth and performance versus burnout and disconnection, anxiety, and all those other things. So we need some stress. We just need the good stress, and we need to know how to get out of the bad stress. So when you look at the vagus nerve, it's basically, on this chart, this blue nerve that comes out from essentially your brain stem. If you take your pinkies, and you have 2 vagus nerves, by the way, it's not just one, but if you take your pinkies and put them behind your ears, that's where it exits. So the vagus nerve exits basically at the top of the neck, and it courses down next to your carotid arteries, so kind of right in front of that big muscle in front of your neck, and then it travels to everything you don't have to think about consciously. So it controls your breathing, it affects your heart, your liver, your spleen, your pancreas, your stomach, your digestive organs. Basically everything from the colon up is innervated and or controlled by the vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve sends 80% of the information from your organs back to your brain. So your body's essentially like an information superhighway. So your brain is making electricity, it sends it down your spinal cord and then into the organs, and then the organs translate that information back through the vagus nerve to the brain. So it's like a two-way line of communication. I had a safety pin that I forgot to bring with me, but it's kind of like a safety pin. So if the safety pin's intact, you got the brain here, the body here, when everything's flowing the way it's supposed to, then you're healthy. When you disconnect that or you unclip the safety pin, then that's interference to the way the nervous system functions. So it's the longest cranial nerve in the body. It's cranial nerve number 10 for all the nerds out there. And it connects the brain to the heart, the lungs, the gut, the stomach, like we said, the pancreas, the kidneys, and the spleen. And it controls digestion, immunity, mood, and it also directly controls inflammation, or at least drives inflammation. So it's really a big deal. Almost any condition you can name falls under the control of that one nerve. So there's a thing called the polyvagal theory. We used to think it was just sympathetic and parasympathetic. So you had like your fight or flight, which is sympathetic, and then you have your parasympathetic, which is like rest and repair and digest. Well, now we know that there's actually 3 arms to the vagus nerve. So you have your ventral vagal, which is on the front part of the vagus nerve, which is for your calmness, connectedness, safety, repair, rest, regeneration. And then your dorsal vagus nerve and your sympathetic. So your sympathetic would be like your fight or flight. So if you're running from a tiger, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in to get you away from that tiger. So your pupils dilate, the blood rushes away from your stomach, so digestion shuts down, your fertility would shut down because you don't need to make a baby when you're running away from a tiger. So all the blood rushes to the extremities and to the brain to get you out of the danger. And then the dorsal vagal is where we just freeze. So it's fight, flight, or freeze. So that's kind of the breakdown of how the nervous system works. Symptoms of low vagal tone. So the techniques we're going to show you are really all designed to improve or increase vagal tone, to get the vagus nerve working at a higher level. But when it's low, we deal with things like anxiety, low energy, poor digestion or constipation, depression, high heart rate, chronic inflammation, and that could be chronic inflammation in the joints, like arthritis. It could be chronic inflammation in the liver. It could be essentially anywhere in the body. Poor sleep, headaches, and that list could go on and on and on. Those are just some of the main ones. So the good news is your body is designed, God designed our bodies to heal itself. We are self-healing, self-regulating, self-maintaining. We've got the most amazing system inside of our body. Do you know where the best doctor in the world lives?
Inside our body.
No, in Brentwood. You're supposed to say here. No. Inside of our body. Yeah, you got a doctor that beats your heart and breathes your lungs and digests your food and heals cuts. So your body's designed to heal itself. If you cut your finger, like you get a paper cut, what happens 3 or 4 weeks later? It heals. Sometimes or always? Always. Anybody walking around with a paper cut from like the Reagan administration? No. Like you cut your finger, it's going to heal. You don't have to put a Band-Aid on it. You don't have to put Neosporin. Like your body knows what to do because the healing is in the package. You sprain your ankle, your body knows how to heal it. Right? You give it a month, start walking again, it works. You get a cold or you get COVID, 99.8% of the time if you're under the age of 80 without 6 different chronic health conditions, your body knows how to heal itself. So your body's able to do the job. So the way we activate this, and this is our model that we use, one of the main things we do is a thing called breath work. Has anyone heard of breath work in relation to the vagus nerve? It's becoming more common or more mainstream. So the more traditional type is what's called box breathing. You guys ever heard of box breathing? So if you imagine like a box, you got a 4-sided box. So it's 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. So you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold that for 4, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you hold that for 4 seconds. So in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold, right? So it's the box. So it's 4, 4, 4, and 4. Lots of 4s. So 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 seconds out, 4 second hold, and do it 4 times a day. And that is essentially your box breathing routine. And it takes a minute. Probably not even that. Like it's literally just a few seconds, but we have to remind ourselves to do that. Most people don't breathe very well at all. The vast majority of people don't even really know how to breathe. Like, of course I know how to breathe. I'm 50 years old. I know how to breathe. We really don't. So a little test for this is you take one hand and you put it on your chest, take your other hand and put it on your belly. Everybody do this little play along with me in the sandbox. And then take a few breaths. And I want you to concentrate on which hand you feel moving.
Top one.
Top hand, bottom hand, bottom. It should be the bottom. So we should ideally do what's called belly breathing. I know this feels weird. I've got this weird trick where I can like stick my belly out real far, my 6-month baby. But ideally we should belly breathe, because when you stick your belly out, it pulls the diaphragm down, which sucks fluid into the lungs. And then when you pull your belly back in, pushes the diaphragm up and pushes air out of the lungs. When we chest breathe, we're using a lot of other accessory muscles like the intercostal muscles, the traps, the muscles in the back. So you're basically using your upper body to try to breathe. And you're never going to get anything other than a shallow breath if you're just breathing in and out with your upper body. So that's one key element. My favorite way to do this, or you can just for a minute, you can just breathe in and out of your nose. So deep breaths in and out of your nose for a minute. That's another way to do this. Now my favorite one is the vagal reset breathing. So everybody do this. So you sit up nice and tall. We're going to take a big deep breath in our nose. And then when you get to the top, so you breathe all the way in. And then when you get to the top, you kind of sniff and get that little extra bit of oxygen. So that fills the deeper alveoli, or little air sacs in the lungs. And then you slowly breathe out through your mouth. So in through your nose. Do one more of those. So in through your nose. Anybody feel different? I get almost an instant, like, now I don't know how long that lasts because I'm crazy, but I get kind of an instant release of tension when I do that. We're going to be spreading COVID like crazy in this place, so good. So breath work is a biggie, and we'll talk about a routine to do in this a little bit later. The other one is cold exposure and or sauna. Preferably both, but if you only have access to cold exposure, everybody in this room has access to cold exposure. So when you get under cold temperatures, like you either do like a cold plunge. Has anyone ever done a cold plunge? A few crazies in the room? Yep, I've done it a few times. And it is miserable, by the way, just so you know. But that stimulates or activates the vagus nerve. Or you can just take your shower, at the end of your shower, crank it down as cold as you can stand, like where you're kind of shivering and breathing, like your breathing will get shallow, which is the time that you do some of like the box breathing, because when you force yourself to breathe under stress, it's like strengthening a muscle under stress. So it becomes more routine in your daily life. But you crank it down as low as you can handle it, and you stand there for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you crank it off, and then let your body naturally heat itself back up. So that's a fantastic way of resetting the vagus nerve. But we live in this comfortable world where we want to stay nice and cozy and comfy, and we wake up in our nice, comfy, warm bed, and we take our warm shower, and we get our warm cup of coffee, and we take our air-conditioned car to our air-conditioned office, and then we get home and we sit in our most comfortable recliner so we can watch Netflix and eat a warm bowl of popcorn, right? We're comfortable. We're way too comfortable in this life, and that is part of the problem. There's a great book called The Comfort Crisis by Dr. Michael Easter, and his whole concept, and he hits the nail right on the head. We're basically still hunter-gatherers. So genetically, we are no different than we were 7,000 or 8,000 years ago. We're basically exactly the same. The problem is we don't live in the same world and environment that we live in that we did back then. So when we wake up, we have all these comfortable lives, then the first time somebody cuts us off in traffic, or our boss yells at us, or our mother-in-law says something we don't want to hear, we just blow up because we just can't handle it, right? Now, especially since COVID, I'm convinced that everybody leaves their house at about a 6 out of 10. Like they're already cranked up. They've already yelled at their wife and kicked the dog. So by the time they get through traffic and get to work, they're already kind of amped up and running on sympathetic overdrive. So we have to force ourselves to be a little bit uncomfortable if we want to deal with the stress of daily life. So that's an option. Or you could do what's called the diving reflex, which is where you take a bowl of ice water or put it in the sink and fill it up with ice, get it nice and cold, and just dip your face into it for about 20 seconds. So you'll get that same vagal response by dipping your face in ice water. If you don't want to do the full cold plunge, if you don't want to do the cold shower, that's another option as well. And then sauna is another good technique for resetting vagal activity. The studies in Scandinavia, in like Denmark and Sweden, they showed that if you can do essentially 100 minutes a week, so 25 minutes 4 times a week, or 20 minutes 5 times a week of infrared or hot sauna, it cuts your risk of all-cause mortality, that's death from anything, by about 60%. So if you've got access to a sauna, that's another good one, because when you're in those stressful environments, your body's having to force itself to regulate in those stressful conditions. That's a big one for me. I love the sauna. That's one of my favorite ones. Don't like the cold bath. That's no fun, but I still do it anyways. And then prayer, worship, and gratitude. Those, when you're doing a health talk, scientific nervous system health talk, for some non-religious people, it sounds weird to talk about prayer. But if anyone that has a consistent prayer life, you'll notice when you're in that deep state of prayer that your body just seems more calm and more relaxed. I think it's the Holy Spirit, but the atheist would say it's probably just your vagus nerve calming down. But maybe a little bit of both. Worship, we've all had those experiences when we're worshiping. We feel more calm, we feel more centered, we feel more connected. And then also gratitude. Did you know your body or your brain can't be in gratitude and depression at the same time? It cannot physiologically pull it off. Your brain can't be depressed and in a state of gratitude simultaneously. And you also can't be in anxiety and gratitude simultaneously either. And if you need a little bit of gratitude, you need some perspective on gratitude, just realize there's about 1 million families in Egypt that are raising their families on a trash dump. Every day, they live in the trash dump, they find their food in the trash dump, they make their shelter with the trash dump, and then we complain because our internet's too slow, or it's too hot outside, or this traffic is killing me. I think a lot of that just comes down to perspective. I always try to say my gratitude list is twice as long as my complaint list. And if we can focus on the things that we're grateful for, we all have air in our lungs, we've got family, we've got friends, we've got a place to live. So much to be grateful for. Optimizing sleep, and we're going to do a whole workshop on this either next month or the month after, just on sleep because of how important it is. I think if there's one thing you could do to radically change your health, beyond diet, beyond chiropractic, beyond exercise, the most important thing we could do is fix our sleep. And so many people have trouble with sleep, either falling or staying asleep. The 3-2-1 rule, has anyone ever heard of the 3-2-1 rule? So 3 hours before bedtime, no work. 2 hours before bedtime, no food. And 1 hour before bedtime, no screens. That's the hardest one for most people, because I can put the work away, usually. I can stop eating 2 hours before, but that hour before, turning off the screens. So what I've been doing lately is I've got an eye mask and an earbud where I'll put in like the Bible as you fall asleep, or affirmations, or Napoleon Hill, or whatever. Like it's different, kind of slow, monotone, help me sleep. I'm probably getting brain cancer in my right ear because I wear that earbud for an hour, but it allows me to get rid of those blue lights and screens in order to stimulate that sleep cycle. And we try to eliminate all the light in our house, so in our room, not in our house. So like that little light on the TV or anything coming through the curtains, we want it to be pitch black, 68 degrees, because we love it cold, and then sound machines. So anyone use sound machines? Oh my gosh, you guys are missing out. We take 3 of them on vacation every time in case one breaks, we got to have one for my daughter's room, one for our room, and if one breaks, we got to back up. So we take those things everywhere we go. So sleep is absolutely huge. And then getting into a routine. So if you go to bed at 10 o'clock and you get up at 6, try to do that every night. Or 11 and 7, or or 9 and 5, or whatever your schedule is. My body needs about 6.5 hours is kind of my average. Women need a little bit more, seniors need a little bit more, so that's typically the average of anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a night. High intensity interval training or HIIT training is also extremely good for resetting the vagal nerve and resetting the parasympathetic nervous system. So the best way to know, because there's 1,000 different ways to do HIIT training. You can do it running in place, you can do it with weights, you can do it with air punching or air squats, or I've got a whole module in our training program that we're going to give you that's all based on that. And the best way to know that you're doing that is, so if you're at that point where you're out of breath, then you've reached that point of maximal heart rate or somewhere close to maximal heart rate, then at that point you're stimulating the vagus nerve. Now for some people, they get that way just walking to the mailbox, so it's not that hard. But as you get more conditioned, it's going to take more equipment and more structure. So really the best way to start with this is pick a movement that you can do safely, which you can also get out of breath with, whether that's a stationary bike or whatever, and then you do 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off. And you do that for 4 minutes. So 20 on, 20 off, 20 on, 20 off. 4 minutes is done, you're done. And that's basically all that you need to do. And not only does that help the nervous system and reset the vagal nerve, but it also helps you to build muscle. Because when you're pushing your body to those limits, your body has to respond to that stress, that hormetic stress, that healthy stress, by building more musculature to get ready for the next time that you do that. And if you're over the age of 60, you're going to be losing about 1 to 3% of your muscle every single year doing nothing. So over the course of 10 years, that's anywhere from 10 to 30% of your lean muscle. So we have to, it's more important as we get older. We think that weightlifting and exercise is for younger people. The exact opposite is true. As we get older, muscle mass and muscle density becomes more and more important. And they're showing too that muscle mass is probably the key to healthy longevity. The more muscle you have in later years, the less your risk of diabetes, the less your risk of heart disease, the less your risk of osteoporosis and falling. And the best part of it is it's a sugar reservoir. So when you eat that bad food, or you eat that bowl of pasta or pizza or cheesecake, the more muscle you have, the more storage facility you have for that sugar that you just took in. Because you guys know that excess sugar in the bloodstream is known as diabetes, right? Kind of obvious. Excess sugar in the brain is also known as dementia, which we also call type 3 diabetes. So excess sugar in the blood is diabetes, excess sugar in the brain is type 3 diabetes or Alzheimer's and dementia. Do you know what excess sugar in the liver is? It's cirrhosis or fatty liver, which becomes cirrhosis. Excuse me. Excess sugar in the eyes leads to cataracts. Excess sugar in the teeth leads to cavities. Excess sugar in your nerves leads to neuropathy. Excess sugar in your joints leads to arthritis. Excess sugar in the testicles and the reproductive organs leads to erectile dysfunction. Excess sugar in the female reproductive organs leads to PCOS and infertility. So sugar is a big part of this problem. At the turn of the 19th century, like early 1900s, we were eating about 8 to 10 pounds of sugar per person per year. What do you guess it is today? Close. It's higher. 120. Keep going. It's like an auction. 135. Keep going. It's about 160. 160 pounds of sugar per person per year. And then you add another 130 pounds of flour per person per year. That's about 300 pounds of that stuff. Every single person per year. But cancer's just genetic, and Alzheimer's must be just genetic, and all this obesity must just be genetic, and they're blaming our genes for what we're doing to our bodies. It's not genetic, by the way. Our genes have changed 0.004% in the last 10,000 years. So our genes have changed just a microscopic amount, but the rates of every chronic disease are skyrocketing. So sugar is a big piece of that. And then one of the other methods or techniques is chiropractic care. So the vagus nerve, kind of how this works is the spine houses your nervous system. So your spinal column are these 24 vertebrae that stack on top of each other like little building blocks, and they create basically a housing for the spinal cord. So your spinal cord branches off your brain, runs down your spinal column, and there's nerves that branch out from between the vertebrae, which go to your eyes, ears, nose, and throat, and your heart, and your lungs, and your stomach. So the nerves that go from the spine to the organs is like the gas pedal. So the nerve that leaves the lower part of your neck is the gas pedal to the heart, and then the vagus nerve is the brake pedal to the heart. So every organ has a gas pedal, and it also has a brake. It speeds it up, slows it down. So the nerve that comes out of that lower part of your neck, which is why it's also the same nerve that runs down your arm into your fingertips. That's why when people have a heart attack, they'll feel their neck and their arm, because the same nerve is controlling both structures, essentially. So the way this works, when we're babies and we're doing like tummy time, assuming that we were born without a traumatic birth or any forceps or vacuum extraction or aggressive C-section, if everything goes normal and the baby is doing normal like tummy time where they push up and they learn to crawl and then eventually walk, we develop those healthy curves in the spine. That's how we do that, is from just normal movement of getting off the floor in relation to gravity. But then we have a fall or an injury or a car wreck or carry a heavy backpack or sit in a desk and stare at a computer too long or play contact sports or fall off the trampoline or fall down the stairs or slip on the ice or fill in the blank, 50 other ways to do that. But we'll traumatize those vertebrae in the neck and cause them to shift out of position and eventually start putting pressure on those nerves. And it only takes about the weight of a dime. If you've ever held like a dime in your hand, that much pressure on that nerve causes about 60% loss of function. So a guy at the University of Colorado, Dr. Chung-Ha Soo, did a study with bunny rabbits, and he would cut their backs open, and he would put little weights, that's terrible, but he put little weights on their nerves, and he found that it only took about the weight of a dime to cause 60% loss of function to the heart, or to the lungs, or to the kidneys, or to the whatever else. But then that curve in the neck goes from normal to straight. And hold your hand kind of like this, like the letter C. That's how our neck should look. So we should have a forward curve in our neck. The head sits on top of that curve, kind of like a shock absorber. And then the mushy part of my hand is sort of like the spinal cord. So when you have a nice curve in your neck, the spinal cord is nice and loose and relaxed and not under any tension. Well, when you lose that curve in the neck, it starts to stretch the spinal cord, and then it's tractioning the cord up to about 3 to 6 centimeters. It's pulling and stretching the cord, and that affects the way your brain is talking to the rest of your body. And then some people that we see, their curve is actually going in the opposite direction. So it's really stretching the cord. And then a lot of those outer part of the fibers on the outer part of the cord are the ones that control pain or can detect pain. So a lot of people don't even feel it because those fibers are being stretched. So a lot of people with this condition, they might get a crick in their neck every now and then, or they might feel a little stiff, or their shoulders get tight, but they don't really feel the impact that it's having on their nervous system. And for most people, me, myself included, I thought chiropractic was just about stiff necks and sore backs, maybe headaches potentially, but it's really about the function of your nervous system. So for most people that use chiropractic just for stiff necks and sore backs, it's sort of like using your car just for the radio. Like, sure, like it does that, but you're not getting all the other benefits that it could be helping with. The pain, by the way, the stuff we feel, the symptoms, the pain, the stiffness, the soreness, those are just the tip of the iceberg kind of things. It's just the body's way of telling you that it's in crisis. Pain is like the oil light in the car. So you have to lose a lot of oil before that oil light pops on. But then if you put a little bit of oil back in, the light goes off. And that's how most people do chiropractic care. They wait till they are in pain, and they come a couple times till they feel better. Oh, I feel great. And then they wait till it comes back, and they kind of do this little thing back and forth. They're never filling the tank and reaching their potential. They're just kind of mitigating and managing symptoms. And that's not your fault. That's our fault, because we have not done a good job of teaching people what this is all about. So in addition to the adjustments, we try to do spinal corrective care. We try to restore that curve. We give you that little neck wedge that feels fantastic. And you lay your head off of it miserably for about 15 minutes, and it helps to restore that curve in the neck. Because we spend all of our time looking down at screens, typing, texting, like our whole life is just spent with our head forward. So this takes about a decade to go from this phase 1, from normal to phase 1, and then from phase 1 to phase 2, you'll start to see some degeneration in the discs. So the discs start to collapse because of that weight. Instead of it being distributed across that curve in the shock absorber, now it's jamming on those lower discs in the spine, and then eventually your body starts treating it like a broken bone. Anything that is unstable, your body will use bone to stabilize. If my left knee is out of alignment and my right knee is in good alignment, which one gets arthritis? The one that's out of alignment. So it's really a brilliant mechanism that your body uses to create more stability. But for most people, by the time they have pain, they've already got some of the arthritis and the degeneration. So that's the nervous system. The adjustments influence vagus nerve and autonomic tone, which is one of the main benefits of when people come in. We're not just helping with your stiff neck and sore back. We're helping the nervous system to reset itself to improve vagal function, and then it restores that communication between the brain and the body. And I'll tell you, when I was first in practice, 20 years ago now, almost 21, we would adjust a baby one time and the ear infections would clear up. Or we would adjust someone with 20 years of migraines 2 or 3 times and no more migraines. Or their sciatic pain or their whatever, their digestive issues. You adjust them a couple times and they magically get better. It's not magic, it's just the body's healing itself. And now I don't see that much anymore. We don't see the miracle cases the way that we used to because people are more sick and they're more stressed and they're more toxic and they're staring at screens and there's just more, that's why we've kind of evolved out of just doing chiropractic, because people need to eat better, they need to move better, they need better vagal tone, they need more tricks and strategies in order to get and stay healthy. So some of these other strategies, things like singing. I only sing in the car, windows up with the radio as loud as it'll go. So that is all. Any of you guys are singers in the room, you probably noticed when you sing and you hit those notes and you kind of feel like you're in your zone, that your body just kind of feels more relaxed. And you could do it all day long. Andy, when you play that amazing instrument, you probably feel like you can do that all day long and your body feels better. Humming is another option. So when you hum, you want to do the hum without the M. So everybody try that. So it's hum without the M. So it's basically ha, and it's a long, extended exhale. Can't wait to see the replay of this. It's going to be awesome. So singing and humming are a good one. I'm not a big fan of chanting. But if you want to chant, sure, go ahead. Hopefully it's something faith-related. And then gargling is another good one. And this would be aggressive gargling. So you want to gargle to the point, if you can do it to the point to where you get like a tear in your eye, because you stimulated the lacrimal duct with the vagus nerve, and you're getting like a tear in the eye, you've actually done it at the right level. So you can do it with regular water, or you can do it with salt water. That helps to break up some of the mucus in the throat, which is a double effect. Or you can do it in the shower. Just get a mouthful of shower water and just gargle as hard as you can for about 30 seconds. And the longer you can do it, the better. So that's another option. Laughing is another really good one. No one feels worse after they laugh or have a good belly laugh. I was going to play this clip of my son when he was not even a year old. He's sitting on the kitchen counter and my daughter's brushing her teeth and she spits into the sink and he starts laughing. Like the laugh of a 1-year-old, that belly laugh. Like, what's better than that? I don't think anything's better than that, to be honest. And I could play that, we'd all smile, we'd all feel nice vagal tone when we do that. So laughing's a big one. And then eye contact. Eye contact, because that's how we're designed. And if you notice, like if you've ever held a baby, they will stare directly into your soul. Like they will stare right into your eyes, and they will not break eye contact unless there's a noise somewhere that makes them, startles them. But they will literally stare us in the face right into your eyes, because it does two things. It calms down the vagus nerve, and it also stimulates a hormone release called oxytocin. And that's the connection and bonding hormone that's released in our bodies. And you notice too, like, there's only two reasons anyone would ever break eye contact. Like if you're having a conversation with someone and you're talking, the only reason you would ever break eye contact is for one of two reasons. It's either fear or shame. Because babies don't break eye contact because they're not afraid unless something startles them, and they don't have a lot of toxic shame. I mean, they poop on themselves, for crying out loud. Like they have no shame, right? So they don't have those two things until we get older and we learn that it's like weird to do that and I gotta break away, but we're designed to do that. If you've, in marriage therapy or counseling one time, this was years ago, the counselor had me and my wife sit about a foot from each other, and for a minute we had to stare into each other's eyes and not break eye contact. And it was weird. And we were both laughing, but it stimulates that vagal tone, releases oxytocin, and it creates an attachment bond between those two people. Because that's how God made us. That's how we're designed. But now we spend more time staring at other people's eyes on screens and lack human interaction. So find a weird friend and just stare directly into their eyes for an hour. HRV, so the best way to measure vagal tone is through a thing called heart rate variability. And that is it's becoming more and more popular. It's in all of our devices now. It's on my Apple Watch. They have the thing called the Oura Ring. You can get those at Best Buy or online. And they make the Whoop strap. There's probably several other of those that are out there. But they basically measure the distance between your heartbeats. Because I used to think your heart should go bump, 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 bump. That's not healthy. It should not be like a metronome. It should be bump, 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 bump. There should be variability between our heartbeats. And the more variability there is between your heartbeats, the healthier you are, because your body's able to swing in and out of that sympathetic and parasympathetic state very, very quickly. So if you're looking at your device, you want your heart rate variability to be 50 or above. If you're in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, you're doing really, really good. I looked at mine, and mine was like in the 30s. So it's 20s, 30s. So I've got some work to do. So nowadays, the good thing is you can track it and actually see on this day and time, my heart rate variability was terrible, or I had a glass of wine before I went to bed, and the next morning my HRV was way off, or I had that cheesecake, or I got a bad night's sleep. Like you can track your lifestyle and what it's doing to your health. And that's one of the most important metrics that we can get. Forget about your cholesterol, which is a big scam anyway, but forget about some of these other blood lipid markers that we put so much emphasis on, and focus on things that really matter, which is our nervous system. So heart rate variability is a big one. Biofeedback. Has anyone ever done biofeedback? There's different ways to do that. When my wife was really sick, she had this little thing that clipped onto her ear, and then there was a temperature sensor that she would hold in her hands, and the computer screen would have this little ball that was going in little waves, and she would have to breathe in a way to create that vagal tone to keep the ball in the pattern. And then she got really, really good at it. I was terrible at it, but she could get it to kind of stay on track, and her hand sensor would be at like 72 degrees when she started, and by the time she finished, it would be like 96 or 98 degrees. She could heat up her hands by breathing, because she's getting out of that sympathetic fight or flight, and she's getting into that parasympathetic rest and repair tone. There's a great book, by the way, by Dr. Robert Sapolsky, with an S, and it's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Has anyone ever heard of this book? It sounds like a kid's book, but it's like a big fat science manual. It's not a good read, by the way. But it's why zebras don't get ulcers, because they don't. So in the wild, a zebra's eating grass, and then a lion jumps out to eat it, and then their sympathetic nervous system kicks in, they run, they go into fight or flight, they burn off a lot of those stress chemicals, and then when the lion's gone, they calm back down, and now they're in that parasympathetic state. The problem is your body can't distinguish between a lion trying to eat you, or a tax bill, or a deadline, or a bad night's sleep. Like, stress is just stress to the body. It doesn't really know how to distinguish it. So we're literally running from the tiger all day long. But animals don't do this. It's just us animals are the ones that do. Because if you imagine, if you took a chimpanzee out of the jungle and you put him in Franklin and you gave him a desk job, and in the morning before work he had a Starbucks latte and a biscuit, and then he drove through traffic, and then he sat at his desk job, and all the coworkers that he hates and his boss is yelling at him, and then he drives home through traffic, and then he eats a big bowl of pasta and sits on the couch and watches Netflix all night. What happens to the health of that animal? Does he get healthier or sicker? How many times out of 1,000? 1,000, right? And what's the solution? Do we need to take him to the doctor and find the right cocktail of antidepressants and blood pressure pills and maybe some pain pills because his back's hurting him? Or do we need to get him back to his genetically designed environment? And that's the key. We're animals. We're part of the animal kingdom, just like the chimpanzees and the tigers and the zebras, but we just don't live lives that even remotely resemble what we're designed to live. So I'm not advocating that we go back to loincloths and living in caves, but we got to have tools to kind of get us back to that state. And then grounding and PEMF. So people have heard of grounding. It's becoming more and more popular. So very simple, and it's free. You go outside in the grass or in the dirt. I like to go in the sand, but I don't live there. But you take your bare feet and you just stand in the grass or the dirt or the sand, preferably for 20 to 30 minutes to an hour. And you're pulling electrons out of the earth. So that's helping to calm down the vagus nerve. And it's also making your platelets, it's charging the platelets in your blood to make them repel one another. So within your bloodstream, now your blood cells don't stick together as easily. They make them less sticky, so less risk of strokes and heart attacks and cardiovascular disease. And then in our office, we have 2 chairs in the back. They're called pulsed electromagnetic field therapy chairs. They're the blue chairs we've got in the back. But you sit in the chair, and it has a big magnet next to it, and it pulses an electromagnetic field through the body. So when you're sitting on that chair, you kind of feel your body like kind of jumping. And a lot of people take a nap when they do it, so you see them kind of like bouncing around. But it's basically like putting your cell phone into the charger. Putting your vagus nerve into the charger is essentially how that works. So it helps to reduce inflammation. People heal quicker. They tend to sleep better. They tend to have more energy because their body, it's energizing the mitochondria and balancing out the vagus nerve. There's lots of different ways. You can get grounding sheets. If you want to have a grounding sheet, so you can get them on Amazon. You put them on your bed, and it connects to the negative part of the outlet. Just plug it in, and you sleep on a grounded surface, or get a grounding blanket. There's different ways to do that, and they're relatively inexpensive. Improvements in vagal tone shows to reduce anxiety, increased energy, regular bowels. By the way, on the topic of bowels, we should go twice a day. Kind of the average. 2 to 3 times a day. How many times a day do you eat?
3.
Yeah, so it's a tube. You put 3 in, you get 3 out, right? But we get used to going like once a day or every other day, or I'll go 3 days and then go two times. Like, we just get used to this irregular pattern of bowel motility, and it's a big problem in the U.S. Improved mood, lowered heart rates, better sleep, on and on and on and on. And I think we'd all raise our hands to get a little bit of all 6 of those if we could. And it's simple and it's easy, and you can do it at home, and you don't have to have fancy equipment. You can just do it on your own. You just gotta do the work. So here's a daily vagus reset routine. So in the morning, you do your regular shower, and then you end it with 30 seconds to a minute of a cold shower, and start with it just barely, where it's cool. And the next time, go a little bit colder, and then a little bit colder, and a little bit colder, to where eventually, like, you're actually in a cold shower for 30 seconds to a minute, doing the breath work and doing the grounding in the morning. One of the best things we can do, by the way, in the morning, especially while it's still warm out, is go outside where you can see the sun rising up over the horizon, put your bare feet in the grass, and watch the sun as it rises up over the horizon. Stare directly at the sun. Now people say, what about my eyes? I'm going to get cancer. It's going to burn out my retina. Not at that angle. There's no UVA, there's no UVB. You're just getting the infrared light from the sun. So that's going to not only help with your eyesight, but it stimulates the melatonin cycle 16 hours later. So it helps to reset the circadian rhythm. So you're calming down the vagus nerve, and then you're resetting your sleep cycle for that night. So 10 minutes of that, and that's with no screens or no glasses or no windshield. You want to ideally just directly at the sun. Midday, do a little bit of gratitude, a little bit of that breath reset, that in the nose and out through the mouth, and then try to get as much sunlight as we can. We are starved for sunlight. If you had any other animal get as little sunlight as we get as a species, they would get sick and suffer with almost every chronic disease that we do, because we're made to live outdoors. So there's a thing called vitamin D that you guys have all heard of, I'm sure. You only really get it from the sunshine or from supplements or tanning beds next door. But ideally, you would get it from the sunshine. And we need about 20 minutes of sunshine every day in our bathing suit with no sunscreen. Every day. And that's year-round. That's not just in the spring and summer months. Like, we're designed to get that all year round. And your vitamin D, by the way, if you want to look at that on a blood test, because we should check that periodically, you want your blood levels around 70 to 90. So when you go get your labs done, you want to make sure that that number falls somewhere between 70 to 90. And you cut your risk of breast cancer by about 60%, you cut your risk of colorectal cancer by about 38%, your risk of MS, and I could give you the list, but there's a list of almost every disease that goes down when your vitamin D goes up. And they even knew from COVID early on, there was a South Korean study where they showed a 96% reduction in COVID hospitalizations and death in people that had optimal vitamin D levels. We could have done that from the beginning and skipped all these ridiculous mRNA vaccines and solved this whole problem much, much quicker. Because vitamin D is really not a vitamin. We call it a vitamin, but it's not. It's actually a hormone. It's closely related to the function of your immune system. It's related to all of your sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. Cold and flu season. There's no such thing as a cold and flu season. Like the flu virus hides in your closet and waits till October and then jumps out and magically goes away in March. Like, it's a vitamin D deficiency season. So we need to do that year-round ideally. And then for the evening, we do the prayer, do the humming, the gargling, the reset breathing. Pick whatever you want, whichever one works best for you. The key is to just do it regularly. And I promise you, you do this every day for 30 days, you will 100% feel the difference. It's not quacky, weird, woo-woo science. This is real stuff, and it works if you work it. And then it helps us to heal faster, live calmer, and do better. So with us, we have kind of a concept of the whole body solution, the whole person solution. So we want to nourish the body, we want to fix the deficiencies, and remove the toxicities. So basically, if you think of yourself as a bucket or a cup, there's only so much you can hold. So much toxicity, so much PCBs and flame retardants and heavy metals and chemicals and chlorine and fluoride, and add them all up. You can only hold so much until the cup runneth over. And when that cup spills over is when you get symptoms or you get diseases. So if we can keep the cup empty and not put as much junk in there, then we stay under that threshold of sickness and disease. The problem is we don't know how big our cup is from birth, and we don't know how much is already in that cup when we're born. Because 100% of pregnant mothers have PCBs in their cord blood. 100%, not 80% or 90%. So 100% of women have flame retardants in their cord blood. And then we have this onslaught of mass vaccinations that kids get 76 vaccines. 76 doses of 17 vaccines before they get through high school that have aluminum and polysorbate 80 and a little bit of mercury now in some of those. So you start adding these things up, it's just a ridiculous onslaught. The beautiful thing is your body is good at detoxing. It knows what to do if we just quit bombarding it. Heal the heart, processing emotions and building resiliency. For me, emotions as a man who played sports, and I'm a guy, and I'm not supposed to have emotions, and those are for women and for weak men, that is so untrue. We all have emotions. We're all going to feel sad and hurt and lonely and angry. Like, we're all going to have those emotions. There's no getting away from it. So my key, and we did a workshop in this a couple months ago, is to be able to name the emotion first. I feel scared. I feel hurt. I feel angry. Be able to name it, because if you don't name it, you can't process it. That's the first key, and we go in detail with that at the other workshop. So get that on YouTube. And then that helps us to build resiliency. Because if we don't know what to do with those emotions, if we suppress them or we minimize them or rationalization or denial is basically what that ends up being, it's going to come out sideways somewhere. So it's part of the human experience. Did you know that babies have emotions before they have thought? Like when your baby's born, they don't know how to talk to you. They don't have verbal capacity or cognition. They don't really know how to think or put thoughts together, but they know how to cry when they're sad. They know how to howl when they're hurt. They know how to reach out when they're lonely. They know how to lean in when they're angry. Like, they know how to do these emotions. But then as we get older, we're taught that, like, those are bad and you need to keep those to the side, and, you know, big boys don't cry, and, you know, keep those things bottled up, toughen up, be a man. So we're learned to suppress those things and start living from here as opposed to living from here, which is the way God made us, right? And then anchor everything in faith. And for me, that comes down to obedience and surrender. That was my word for the year, was obedience and also surrender. And I am terrible at both of those things. I try, but it is a daily struggle to remain obedient and surrender. And again, that's part of my upbringing. Like, you're supposed to win. You're supposed to never give up and never surrender. Like, that's weakness. My vision of surrender was the guy in the war-torn Vietnam that's sitting on the side of the road. He lays his rifle down and he sits there and waits for someone to come and take him to the POW camp. That was my intention or my idea of surrender. But in reality, surrender is our greatest victory, because then I don't have to be God. I can just struggle good to be human. My prayer every day is, Lord, help me to work hard and do the next right thing. Let me to work my butt off with my family, with my vocation, with my relationships, with work as hard as I can every day and live in surrender. Let thy will be done. Because it's so freeing when I don't have to be God. I don't have to drive the bus, because invariably it always ends up in the ditch. And I can just turn it over to the one who is God, and I can struggle to be human. So obedience and surrender. And then the health reset. We have a full program. I'm just launching this. This is the start of it. I've been working on it hard for almost a year, but really it's a culmination of everything that I've learned that has helped me over the last 20 plus years. And it's physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health. And I am no spiritual guru. I'm not a pastor. I don't know. I probably have 4 or 5 Bible verses memorized, chapter and verse. So I'm not a Bible scholar by any stretch, but I can share with you what's helped me. And then I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist, but I can share with you what's helped me. And then the physical stuff we've been doing for a long time, so we're pretty decent at that. But it breaks it down into 76 different modules total, everything from nutrition, if you want to look at like a 30-day plan for the ketogenic diet or the paleo or carnivore or Mediterranean diet with recipes and shopping lists. We've got a fitness program for people that are younger, middle-aged, or older, strength training, building muscle, mobility, and flexibility. We have a whole section on blood work, like when you get your lab, what labs should we get done first, and then how do we read those labs? Because when you look at your labs, you're compared, those ranges are set for other sick people in your demographic. So when you look at those ranges on your cholesterol or even your blood pressure, they're looking at other sick people as the comparative group. So do you want to be compared to other sick people, or do you want to be compared to what's optimal and ideal? So there's ways to read those labs, which is not here, but where are you at in like the health and wellness range? Everything from cholesterol to fasting insulin, fasting glucose, and tons more. And then we go through biohacks, red light therapy, stem cells, PRP, peptides, grounding, all the other things. One of the 76 modules is on the vagus nerve, so it's pretty in depth. And then tools you can use for life, and you guys get that as a gift for free. So that's my gift to you. Now I am putting a 90-day window on it because I don't want you to just get it and put it away and drag your feet. I want you to have it for 90 days and download everything, screenshot, steal it, take it, print it off, put it in a binder. I don't care, but it'll be yours to keep. But I want you to use it. And then the catch to it, here's the catch, is you have to use it. And then I want you to give me a testimonial at the end of it. That's my ask. So if you get some results from it, just write a little testimonial that showed that this is how I benefited. So, all right, guys, that is all I've got. Yep. So Suzanne, how are we doing that?
QR codes.
QR code?
We have them at the front.
Okay. So she's got a little QR code. You take your cell phone, you take a picture of it, and then it takes you right to the website. And then there's a coupon code. I think it's Recover Wellness in all caps. She'll give you all that. And then it gives you access to that entire program and dive in. So, thank you. Appreciate that. Any